Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master and Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Mahārāja, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're also paying our humble Dandavat Pranam to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for providing us this wonderful commentary and translation of Bhagavatam. And following the guidance and instruction of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we are praying to Srimati Rādhārānīṃ. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has told us that unless we can understand something about Srimati Rādhārānīṃ through our reading of Bhagavatam, then our study has been wasted if we have not done that. Yadi sevā-vañcitāḥ syāma, yasyāḥ kṛpayā vayaṃ labhema, Sarvaṃ prāpnumaḥ prayojanaṃ, dhāmni śrī-bhagavat pade, Kṛṣṇa-sambandhi Sarvaṃ ca, Yadi na jānīmahe tutam, Aṣṭādaśasu sahasreṣu, ślokānāṃ bhagavat-oktiṣu, Rādhārānīṃ na vindāmaḥ Nishphalam bhagavat adhyayanam, radhikaya kripam vina, vyartasyat sarva parishrama. If we are cheated out of serving that personality whose mercy awards us everything we need, including residence in the Lord's holy Dham, and all things connected to Krishna, and if we cannot understand or discover Radharani within the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, then our study of Srimad Bhagavatam has been pointless. Without the mercy of Srimati Radharani, all of our efforts are in vain. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we are continuing our reading today from Canto 5, Chapter 12, Text 11. Samham smritir mriga dehe pivira, Krishnarchana prabhavano jahati, Ato aham jana sangada shango, Vishan kamano vivritas charami. My dear heroic king, due to my past sincere service to the Lord, I could remember everything of my past life, even while in the body of a deer. Because I am aware of the fall down in my past life, I always keep myself separate from the association of ordinary men. Being afraid of their bad materialistic association, I wander alone unnoticed by others. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, Swalpam apyasya dharmasya, Bhagavad Gita 2.40. It is certainly a great fall to go from human life to animal life. But in the case of Bharata Mahārāja or any devotee, devotional service to the Lord never goes in vain. Oh, sorry, we're continuing from text 15. Okay. It is certainly a great fall down from human life to animal life, but in the case of Bharata Mahārāja or any devotee, devotional service to the Lord never goes in vain. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam, chajatyante kalevaram. At the time of death, by nature's law, the mind is absorbed in a certain type of thinking. This may lead one to animal life, yet for a devotee there is no loss. Even though Bharata Mahārāja received the body of a deer, he didn't forget his position. Consequently, in the body of a deer, he was very careful to remember the cause of his fall down. As a result, he was given a chance to be born in a family of very pure brahmanas. Thus his service to the Lord never went in vain. Text 16. Tasmannaro shanga sushanga jata jnanasine haiva vivrikna moha harim tadiha katana shrutabhyam labdha smritir yatyati param advana. Simply by associating with exalted devotees, anyone can attain perfection of knowledge, and with the sword of knowledge can cut to pieces the illusory associations of this material world. Through the association of devotees, one can engage in the service of the Lord by hearing and chanting Śravaṇam Kirtanam. Thus one can revive his dormant Krishna consciousness, and sticking to the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, return home back to Godhead even in this life. Purport. To become liberated from material bondage, one must give up the association of worldly people and accept the association of devotees. Positive and negative processes are mentioned in this regard. Through the association of devotees, one develops Krishna consciousness, which is dormant within. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving this chance to everyone. We are giving shelter to everyone who is serious about progressing in Krishna consciousness. We arrange for their lodging and board so that they can peacefully cultivate Krishna consciousness and return home back to Godhead, even in this life. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 12th chapter of Śrīmad Bhagavatam, entitled The Conversation Between Mahārāja Rahūgaṇa and Jaḍa Bharata. Chapter 13. The Brahmana Jaḍa Bharata, this is the summary of the chapter. The Brahmana Jaḍa Bharata became very kind to King Rahūgaṇa, and to disassociate him from the material world, he spoke figuratively of the forest of the material world. He explained that this material world is like a great forest in which one becomes entangled due to the association with material life. In this forest there are plunderers, the 6 senses, as well as carnivorous animals like jackals, wolves, and lions, wife, children, and other relatives who are always anxious to suck the blood from the head of the family. The forest plunderers and the carnivorous blood-sucking animals combine to exploit the energy of a man within this material world. In this forest there is also a black hole covered by grass, into which one may fall. Coming into the forest and being captivated by so many material attractions, one identifies himself with this material world, society, friendship, love, and family. Having lost the path and not knowing where to go, being harassed by animals and birds, one is also victimized by many desires. Thus one works very hard within the forest and wanders here and there. He becomes captivated by temporary happiness and becomes aggrieved by so-called distress. Actually, one simply suffers in the forest from so-called happiness and distress. Sometimes he is attacked by a snake, deep sleep, and due to the snake bite he loses consciousness and becomes puzzled and bewildered about discharging his duties. Sometimes he is attracted by women other than his wife, and thus he thinks he enjoys extramarital love with another woman. He is attacked by various diseases, by lamentation, and by summer and winter. Thus one within the forest of the material world suffers the pains of material existence. Expecting to become happy, the living entity changes his position from one place to another, but actually a materialistic person within the material world is never happy. Being constantly engaged in materialistic activities, he is always disturbed. He forgets that one day he has to die. Although he suffers severely, being illusioned by the material energy, he still hankers after material happiness. In this way, he completely forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By hearing this from Jaḍa Bharata, Mahārāja Rahūgaṇa revived his Krishna consciousness, and thus benefited from Jaḍa Bharata's association. He could understand that his illusion was over, and he begged pardon from Jaḍa Bharata for his misbehavior. All this was told to Maharaj Parikshit by Shukadeva Goswami. Text 1. Brahmana uvacha Duratyaye Dvanya Ajaya Nivisheto Rajastama Sattva Vibhakta Karmadrik Sa Esha Sartor Tuta Parapari Brahman Bhavatavim Yatina Sharma Vindati. Jaḍa Bharata, who had fully realized Brahman, continued, My dear King Rahūgaṇa, the living entity wanders on the path of the material world, which is very difficult for him to traverse, and he accepts repeated birth and death. Being captivated by the material world under the influence of the three modes of material nature, sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun, the living entity can see only the three fruits of activities under the spell of material nature. These fruits are auspicious, inauspicious, and mixed. He thus becomes attached to religion, economic development, sense gratification, and the monistic theory of liberation, merging with the Supreme. He works very hard, day and night, exactly like a merchant who enters a forest to acquire some articles to sell later for profit. However, he cannot really achieve happiness within this material world. Purport. One can very easily understand how difficult and insurmountable the path of sense gratification is. Not knowing what the path of sense gratification is, one becomes implicated in the repetition of birth and accepts different types of bodies again and again. Thus, one suffers in material existence. In this life, one may think that he is very happy being an American, Indian, Englishman, or German, but in the next life, one has to accept another body among 8,400,000 species. The next body has to be immediately accepted according to karma. One will be forced to accept a certain type of body, and protesting will not help. That is the stringent law of nature. Due to the living entity's ignorance of his eternal blissful life, he becomes attracted to material activities under the spell of Maya. In this world, he can never experience happiness, yet he works very hard to do so. This is called Maya. Text 2. Yasyam ime sannara deva dasyava sartam vilumpanti kunaya kambalat gomayavo yatra haranti sartikam pramatam avisya yata ranam vrikaha. O King Rahūgaṇa, in this forest of material existence, there are 6 very powerful plunderers. When the conditioned soul enters the forest to acquire some material gain, the 6 plunderers misguide him. Thus the conditioned merchant does not know how to spend his money, and it is taken away by these plunderers. Like tigers, jackals, and other ferocious animals in a forest that are ready to take away a lamb from the custody of its protector, the wife and children enter the heart of the merchant and plunder him in so many ways. Purport. In the forest there are many plunderers, dacoits, jackals, and tigers. The jackals are compared to one's wife and children. In the dead of night, jackals cry very loudly, and similarly one's wife and children in this material world also cry like jackals. The children say, "Father, this is wanted, give me this, I am your dear son," Or the wife says, I am your dear wife, please give me this. This is now needed. In this way, one is plundered by thieves in the forest. Not knowing the aim of human life, one is constantly being misguided. The aim of life is Vishnu. Nate vidhu svarta gatim hi Vishnum, Bhagavatam 7.5.31. Everyone works very hard to earn money, but no one knows that his real self-interest is in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of spending money for advancing the Krishna consciousness movement, one spends his hard-earned money on clubs, brothels, liquor, slaughterhouses, and so forth. Due to sinful activities, one becomes implicated in the process of transmigration, and thus has to accept one body after another. Being thus absorbed in a distressed condition, one never attains happiness. Text 3. Prabhuta virutrana gulmaghavare katora damsar mashakar upadruta kvachit tu gandharva puram prapasyati kvachit kṛṣṇa-sambandhi mukha graham. In this forest there are dense bowers composed of thickets of bushes, grass, and creepers. In these bowers the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, or envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in the forest, and sometimes he is bewildered by seeing a fleeting friend or ghost, which appears like a meteor in the sky. Purport. The material household is actually a whole of fruitive activity. To earn a livelihood, one engages in different industries and trades, and sometimes one performs great sacrifices to go to higher planetary systems. Apart from this, at least everyone is engaged in earning a livelihood in some profession or occupation. In these dealings, one has to meet many undesirable people, and their behavior is compared to the biting of mosquitoes. This creates very undesirable conditions. Even in the midst of these disturbances, one imagines that he is going to construct a grand house and live there permanently, although he knows that he cannot. Gold is compared to a quickly fleeting fiend, which appears like a meteor in the sky. It displays itself for a moment and then is gone. Generally, karmis are attracted to gold or money, but these are compared herein to ghosts and witches. Text 4. Nivasatoya travinatma buddhis tatas tato dhavati bo atyavyam kvachich chavatyotita pamshudumra dishona janati rajasphalaksha. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of the material world has his intelligence, victimized by home, wealth, relatives, and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind. That is to say, in his lust, he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during her menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded and he cannot see where to go or what he is doing. Purport. It is said that household attraction resides in the wife because sex is the center of household life. Yanmaitunadi grihamedi shukam hitucham. Bhagavatam 7.9.45. A materialistic person, making his wife the center of attraction, works very hard day and night. His only enjoyment in material life is sexual intercourse. Therefore, karmis are attracted to women as friends or wives. Indeed, they cannot work without sex. Under the circumstances, the wife is compared to a whirlwind, especially during her menstrual period. Those who strictly follow the rules and regulations of householder life engage in sex only once a month at the end of the menstrual period. As one looks forward to this opportunity, his eyes are overwhelmed by the beauty of his wife. Thus it is said that the whirlwind covers the eyes with dust. such a lusty person does not know that all his material activities are being observed by different demigods, especially the sun god, and are being recorded for the karma of one's next body. Astrological calculations are called Jyoti Shastra. Because the Jyoti, or effulgence, in the material world comes from the different stars and planets, the science is called Jyoti Shastra, the science of the luminaries. By the calculations of Jyoti, our future is indicated. In other words, all the luminaries, the stars, and the moon witness the activities of the conditioned soul. Thus he is awarded the particular type of body. A lusty person whose eyes are covered by the dust of the whirlwind or material existence does not at all consider that his activities are being observed by different stars and planets and are being recorded. Not knowing this, the conditioned soul commits all kinds of sinful activities for the satisfaction of his lusty desires. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 5 on Friday. Before we conclude, were there anything to share?
I thought everything was very clear, but interesting to see the comparisons, especially the mosquitoes.
Yeah. In our modern society, we're not, this angle of family life and society life is not discussed, even though it's not a lie. It's a real perspective, and it's true in many ways. It's not just like a harsh, exaggerated representation. It's actually like true in many ways, but we're only presented family life and society life through rose-colored glasses. And then when those things happen, people are like either shocked, in denial, act like they're not happening, but they are happening. And so they're not, they don't have the psychological toolkit or the emotional or spiritual framework to understand, why is this happening? Am I just going crazy? Is this just how life is? There's no other, everyone is going through the same thing. That's just how life is. There's no other option. So there's no scope for this kind of conversation, this kind of dialogue in our society at present, except for, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy. And I think it's important to be able to have young people be aware of this kind of thing, not to try to scare them away from anything, but to be like, this is a perspective that you should consider as you decide what to do as you grow up and how you navigate this world.
Yeah. I mean, it's true about, I mean, when it talks about family life and how there's so many demands. But okay, so here's the one thing.
Yeah,
So many demands on the husband to provide
sure,
the
sure.
needs of the children, the needs of the spouse, the wife, and all of that. But in today's society, the woman
Yes.
is working too. So the
Yeah,
stress is just as high for the woman
sure.
because we're all choosing that kind of life.
Mm.
So we're putting the pressures on ourselves too, um, to want so much that we devote our lives to enslavement, to working to get the money to acquire those things.
Mm. And is it really even a choice? Because what other option were we presented growing up?
Right, right.
It's
Work hard,
yeah,
right. The
yeah.
typical, traditional,
The
you know,
American dream or the Western dream.
yeah. work hard. I mean, I'm sure it's that way in other countries too, but
Of course it is, yeah.
especially, the countries that are thriving, um, with that kind of thinking.
It's more capitalist
Yeah.
kind of culture,
Yeah, yeah. Right.
and exploit. I mean, ultimately it's exploitation. That's the
Yeah.
result of exploitation. But yeah, we're not. People aren't really given an option because they don't know how else they could conduct themselves.
But living a more modest life.
Yeah, and it's fear driven because if you don't, you know, enter the workforce and compete like that, and then your life will be worthless,
Mm,
and your sense of identity is so tied up with these external
mm,
status symbols
mm,
that you don't know that there is a deeper value to life that is nothing to do with those status symbols. So you're just kind of brought up in this culture of fear of if you don't get that and if you don't outcompete everybody else, then you're gonna be in a sorry state and it'll be too late for you. Your prime will be over, and even
mm.
if you got it together later on, too late. Your time's up. You're just gonna be miserable for the rest of your life. This
Mm.
kind, right? I mean, but this kind of thing is there. People think about and they're afraid. That is inspiring them to be very hard and rigid about pursuing that capitalist kind of lifestyle, that Western kind of lifestyle. Although things are I think by the grace of God and the work that the devotees have done, there is some cultural shift away from that kind of thing now, which is nice.
Mhm.
But still, the vast majority still, I think, are influenced by that kind of framework. I don't know if you agree. Maybe not. You have a different vantage point.
Yeah, we all have different vantage points, right? Because we all put our own personal perspective on everything. So there's nuances and things. But the other side of it is that it depends on also how you are focused. If you're focused on your own needs and even your own family's needs, um, and you don't like, share the wealth, you know what I mean? Like give to those in need, because those that are in need, somebody's got to help to support them. So there's a catch 22. It's like this is where I get um a little confused because if you have the right mindset and you are a generous person and a selfless person and a servant leader, you're not keeping it all for yourself. You were there to help and support those charities and those in need and your churches and your synagogues and the places of worship, your temples. um so I mean, how do we support those things without the people that are earning the money and can spare to share? you know that's where I guess I get confused because you know everything needs in today's world, everything needs money to survive because that's just the way it is. Everything costs money to live. We can't live for free. I mean, unless you're I don't living off the grid and you're surviving on your own off the forest, you know, eating the fruits of the forest. Um, how do you do it? That's that's my big question, actually.
That's yukta. It's called yukta vairagya. So one part yukta vairagya means Yukta is the same word, it comes from the same word as yoga, to yoke. Yoke means to connect. So yukta, and then vairagya means renunciation, like the opposite of connect. So
Mm.
so yukta
Mhm.
vairagya means you accept everything that is favorable to cultivating spiritual awareness, Krishna consciousness, and you reject everything unfavorable. So it means everything is fair game to accept with the proper
Mhm.
consciousness.
Mhm.
So what we're rejecting is really the misconception that there are things that aren't within the scope of cultivating spiritual life. So renunciation doesn't mean we have to go to the forest and leave the society, and that's like an external kind of idea of renunciation. It's an internal renunciation where
Mm.
where
Okay.
we're renouncing we are renouncing the desire to exploit those things in society for our own uh, egoic benefit.
Mhm.
And so, in that way, yes, we can, we were born into this society. We didn't naturally, we didn't really choose that, okay, I'm going to live in this capitalist society where money is what makes the world go around and all that kind of stuff. So, to some extent, we have to accept that it's by the grace of God that we ended up in this situation, and with the proper consciousness that it must, if God is all love, and everything even negative that we are experiencing is to teach us a lesson to help us overcome our own deficiencies, then there must be a way, to use this environment that I've been born into in
Mhm.
a favorable way.
Mhm.
Even if these exact situations were once perpetuating my own materialistic bondage because I wasn't looking at them properly,
Mhm.
all I'm renouncing is that vision, not necessarily the circumstances themselves,
Mhm.
just the improper vision of those circumstances. That's what I'm renouncing. And then so it's possible then, like you said, then okay, so now we have some proper Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, uh, genuine religion means proper adjustment of consciousness. So now that, by the grace of the devotees, we've had some proper adjustment. We're still in the same circumstances, but the whole way that we relate to those circumstances changes, and how we utilize energy changes, and in that way, you know, when we were able to use, like you were saying, use the resources to, for the mutual upliftment of everyone in the context of cultivating love of the whole of which we're all part, which is divinity, and we're able to steer clear of just kind of ignorant, closed-minded, self-centered sense enjoyment, you know, without regard for how it may negatively impact others in the
Mhm.
environment. That's all that low-level stuff that perpetuates. The more that we perpetuate the suffering of others, the more that, because we're naturally connected with others, the more we're perpetuating our suffering for ourselves. So the more that we turn a blind eye to the suffering that our selfish actions cause others, the more that we're perpetuating our own suffering in the material world.
Mhm.
Because again, it's based on a narrow minded vision. So we're not seeing how we're connected to others, how we're connected to the organic whole. So the more that we have that proper adjustment and we see that, our actions fall into place. So it's a renunciation internally of the improper kind of vision of isolation and independence, and then it's a yoke of, we are dependent on divinity, on the environment, on each other, and everything is for service of the whole. All my innate abilities that give me so much joy when I can conduct them in a proper way, that is for service of the whole. And service of the whole means service of the parts too, but in the proper context again, because if we're going just, cultivating relationship part to part without the context of the whole, it's also going to be disconnected. It's going to be splintered. We're going to
Mm.
we're going to go with our tribe, the people who resonate with our particular likes and dislikes, and then when we encounter those who have a very different perspective, then we're still going to have that individual, uh, independent kind of, well, it's us against them mentality. Only when you see diversity as for the unity of the whole, then you can have the mental bandwidth to accept things that are totally different from how you see things. But nonetheless, because you accept your finitude and the finitude of your circle and the vastness and gloriousness of the whole, then and you have love for that whole. So you respect, even though this other group is completely different, I really can't see anything that they're seeing, but nonetheless I have deep respect for them because I know they're playing a purpose within the whole, which is different from
Mm.
my purpose, but nonetheless, where there's a reason that both are there, because the purpose of the whole are vastly beyond our small vision. And just
Mm.
by that, having that love naturally, in a very sincere way, not a superficial way, we can respect those
Mhm.
differences without having any problem, no grudges, nothing. And
And the
anyways,
world will be a much better place.
yeah,
Seriously, if
unity in
people could,
diversity.
yeah, right, exactly. The best scenario is when you compare a hand to a foot. It's like
Yeah,
different
exactly.
purposes, but part of the greater good of the whole.
Exactly. Perfect example, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Jai. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year! Yes, yes,
Hare
yes.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And tomorrow is again New Year's Day, is the solar calendar birthday of our beloved Gurudev, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, who's it's only by his grace that we've been given some proper adjustment, and it's only by continuing to meditate on his teachings that we can continue to become properly adjusted. Because definitely we're not there yet, but progress progress is very exciting. The prospect of progress is very exciting. So, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Guru Dev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Tirtha Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jai Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai.
Jai,
All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktiveda Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai.
Jai,
Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai.
Jai,
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai,
Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai,
Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai.
Jai,
Tulasi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai.
Jai,
Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai.
Jai,
Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai. Shri
Jai,
Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol. Jai
Haribol.
Srimati Tulasi Maharani Devi Dasi Ki Jai.
Jai. Krishna Keshava Das ki Jai.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.